Bill Whatcott, come on down, brother. We just have your voice, and that's fine. Welcome to Last Call. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I uploaded a decent avatar from when I was at Queer City Cinema. Do you guys have that?
Don't know.
Well, you'll either see that or it'll just be black where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, we've got a circle and your mic's there, and that's fine. That's fine.
We got a picture of you in your tutu.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah, with that naked sodomite there. Yeah.
Bill, historical wise, once you update our audience in terms of what has happened to you, you got bit by the righteous bug some time ago, and one of the things that really bothers you is the LGBT community and the movement they're having in Canada. And explain to the folks how user friendly is Canada to the LGBTQ community.
I would think, I even hate the word community. I prefer subculture. Community makes it sound like they're like a normal community, families and whatnot. And they're really not. They're a bunch of fetishes and, very dysfunctional people, but they've gotten together as an activist movement. And they've certainly taken over neighborhoods, but they don't operate like normal communities. Canada, I think, might be the most homosexual activist friendly country on the planet Earth, bar none. We might even beat out a lot of Western Europe.
That's I would see America as a chief competitor.
No, definitely not. I can say with some degree of authority, Canada is light years ahead of the United States. I've been to homosexual-friendly LA and Los Angeles, and I didn't see a fraction of pride flags that I would see in a city like Toronto or Vancouver. And even in Los Angeles, as a Christian, I had a lot more free speech and capacity to be myself than in any Canadian city. People who leave Canada and go to the United States, Canadians, to a person, if they're Christians, they really believe they made an improvement in their life. I've met no one who left Canada and moved to the United States, and I know many who've moved to the United States who don't claim that they're not more free.
Interesting. What about the schools? I assume you have government-run schools in Canada?
The majority of schools are government-run, and there's a small number of private schools. My former stepson, I tried to put him in a Christian school, and he refused. When you went to the high school that he was going to, the public high school, and we're talking a small town. We're not talking Toronto or Vancouver. We're talking about a town that would probably be, just think of a town in the United States with 15,000 people, maybe Fairbanks, Alaska. It's kind of an out-of-the-way place. It was called Lacombe, Alberta, which is supposed to be one of the most conservative counties in Canada. And as soon as you walked into that school, there was a pride flag on the administration desk. And then there was a little covenant, if you want to call it that, where you promise not to bully anyone and to refer to everyone by their
preferred pronouns, I think.
Canada.
We lost you there for a second.
Sorry, where did you lose me?
Something where I think you were going to say preferred pronouns.
Yeah, this small town conservative, and I put in quotation marks conservative, high school, at their front desk of their administration office, they had a pride flag with the Black Lives Matter transgender, I guess it's called the Pride Progress flag. And then under that, they had a covenant where when you walk into this school, you promise not to bully anyone and refer to everyone by their preferred pronouns. So that's a small town school. That is not a big city school. It gets a lot more nutty there.
Are your schools union run?
Yeah, public schools are. There's a Christian school where I was doing some janitorial for them. That was definitely not unionized, and there was Bible verses rather than pride flags. But that's like 1% of our education system, and praise God that it's there. All the public schools in Canada would be under a teachers union. They're generally provincial teachers unions, and they're all far left. I'd actually use the word communistic. Yeah,
Well,
union.
Yeah. I sort of kind of understand what you're talking about. It's the same control as here. It's union controlled, and it's very consistent. You mentioned small towns. It doesn't make any difference whether it's a small town or a large town. They're union run, so you're going to see what you see, regardless of what school system you're in.
Yeah, and I don't know that I can blame the union for the Pride Progress flag and nutty covenant that you're going to call people fake pronouns in the administration office. That's obviously the administration. That's not the union. That's the people who are administrating the school wanting to do this. So they're actually lockstep with the union when it comes to the LGBT movement.
What's your current status, Bill? And how did you get here? To that status?
My current status, you mean for court or life?
Yeah.
Or
for court, and we get into life later, but for court.
Yeah, in 3 weeks, I'll be back in court for a week. And I am going to send out a Zoom link in the coming days when my lawyer sends it to me. The Crown doesn't have a strong case, and that doesn't mean much because our courts, I think, in Canada are a little bit more corrupt than in the United States. So I think we do get really nutty and unjust judgments that go against case law. And I think that's altogether possible in my case. But I think the Crown would like to have as credible of a case as they can. And seeing as my flyer that I'm being criminally prosecuted for your viewers who don't know, I was charged with a hate crime for putting out gospel flyers criticizing our former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and criticizing the Toronto Pride Parade, ungodly Pride Parade, homosexual Pride Parade. And the flyer had some Bible verses pertaining to morality and eternal life. And then it had some medical statistics on the risks of the homosexual lifestyle that's inherent to the lifestyle. And I was charged with a hate crime, and the prosecution was asking 18 months in prison. And Canada is notorious for lenient sentences when it comes to actual crimes, much more lenient than the United States. Anyways, I was acquitted, and the prosecution appealed, so I am a double jeopardy case. I'm going back on trial again for the same crime. And in order to bolster their case this time around, they want to introduce human rights tribunal judgments where I was convicted in years gone by, some of them 25 years old. And they want to use that to bolster their case that I'm a hateful person and therefore should be convicted of a hate crime, even though those human rights tribunal judgments are dealing with flyers that I didn't even distribute at the Pride Parade in 2016. These were flyers I distributed on issues like homosexual activism in public schools in 2021. They want to introduce those to make the argument that my current flyer is a hate crime, which is really a specious argument.
What's your current flyer? What's so bad about that?
I think you've seen the flyer. It's up on the Mass Resistance website. I'm 10 years into this now, and looking at that flyer, I'm not allowed to show it to you as part of my bail conditions, but it's on Mass Resistance if anyone wants to see it. A very good organization.
Yep.
And I don't see anything wrong with my flyer. I think it's in perfect harmony with my evangelical Christian worldview. I think it's substantially accurate, and there's nothing hateful except for hating the sin of homosexual behavior and politicians, using their office to promote that ungodly lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I think that's a public good. I really think my flyer is a public good.
But you're telling the truth.
Well, that's what makes it good. It was a truthful flyer, and I was accused of lying, and they actually brought on experts in my first trial who perjured themselves under oath, and they were called out as such by the judge, who was not my friend. You know, they actually had to lie about my flyer, and that vindicated my flyer even more. They had a infectious disease expert that had the audacity to say I was dishonest when I said there's hepatitis outbreaks in the homosexual community. And I had a lawyer who was not a Christian, he was a Jew, but he was really good, John Rosen, who had some investigators dig up papers that this infectious disease expert wrote expressing concerns about hepatitis outbreaks in gay bathhouses. She validated what I said in her own papers, but lied under oath that hepatitis wasn't a problem, which, being an infectious disease expert, she demolished her own credibility.
Amen. Bill, current status with you're heading into court, what, the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, the 27th, Monday I'll be there for 5 days.
Okay, now it's a full trial?
No,
again?
Those are hearings to introduce previous human rights tribunal convictions as evidence in my current trial.
Okay, so
we're obviously opposing that. That's what the hearings are about. Yeah.
So whether it should be admitted or not, is that the basic theme there?
Yeah, like, does my human rights conviction in 2013 have anything to do with my trial in the year 2026? That's when I'm going on trial again.
And your human rights conviction was for?
Hi, Lindsay here from MNP Debt. Debt can be a heavy burden. You deserve local support through every step of your...
Putting out flyers, what were they? Sodomites in our public schools was one. The other one was keep homosexuality out of our public schools, which I distributed way back in 2021. And that was arguing that homosexual activism should not be allowed in Saskatchewan public schools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it really has very little to do with my flyer criticizing the Toronto Pride Parade in 2016. These are different flyers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they're saying it shows that I have long, deep-seated, their words, anti-gay animus.
Yeah, as versus pro-Christian.
Yeah.
And I explained early on in our program that what has happened in America and in the world, actually, is that there's a stage, a world stage, and the LGBT community was not on the stage at all. And the first thing I asked was, okay, well, we want to be on the platform, but we'll stay in the back and we'll just take care of the sound maybe, or just sit there and behave ourselves. And the next thing you know, they're on the stage. Well, okay, we just want to be a part in the play. Just one part. We want to be accepted, just one part of the play. That's all we want. And the next thing you know, they're asking for the lead role. And by the way, we want to write the plays as well. Meanwhile, Christians, conservatives, all the other isms are floating off the stage. So we have the point today where there's nothing up there but the LGBTQ community. They're writing the plays. All the players are them. And don't you dare ask to be in, because that's hateful. And that's the stage that you entered and you tried to play a part in, and their reaction is, oh no, let's make an example out of Bill Whatcott. Is that a fairly good explanation of what's happening?
Yeah, it is. And in Canada, I don't even fully fault the Christian community, and that is a community, for being off the stage, because we've been actively removed. You know, if you're a Christian in government and you say something like I support traditional marriage, not a very strong statement at all, and you put that on your Facebook, you can actually be fired out of your job. And once you're fired out of the federal government for being a so-called homophobe, you'll never get another job in government. So, you know, it's a very life-altering thing for people. And so Christians here have been forced off the stage. One thing your viewers should know is in the last 2 to 3 years, Canada has had 135 churches burned as an arson across the country.
Ooh.
And did you know that?
No.
No, we're also talking some fairly large churches like the Catholic Church in Morinville, Ontario. And isn't it something that if a Muslim mosque gets attacked in Canada, and that rarely happens, but I guess it did happen once or twice, you probably saw that in your news down in the States, but 135 churches have been attacked, and our government refuses to talk about it. There is Christian media and conservative media up here that talks about it quite a lot, but Canada is starting to resemble a little bit places like Syria and places in Africa.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot of churches, a lot of them small towns where it's the only church in the town. And that's probably done by anarchists like Antifa. And just a terrible anti-Christian, what would be the word? A very dark period of history is coming over Canada where, we're going to be actively suppressed and silenced. So it isn't entirely our fault that we're not on the stage. We're actually being removed violently.
We relinquished it. We relinquished it, and trying to get back on is where the violence happens.
Yeah, I don't know Canada. Yeah, we probably relinquished it. That might be fair. But I think we were pushed off a lot more aggressively than in the United States. Like in the United States, I could have a job as a bus driver. In Canada, when they look at my Facebook, I really can't. I'd have to hide my Christian identity and change my name to enter the mainstream. I wouldn't have to in the U.S.
We're going to take a break, Mr. Anderson. If you can find some other pictures of Bill to maybe put up there, that would be great. BJ Edwards along, Mr. Anderson. This is your last call, folks. The walls are closing in. From the north, from the east, from the west, and from the south.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with BJ Edwards.
And we are back with Bill Whatcott, a Christian gentleman that is fighting the fight in Canada. Bill, do you have Christian friends? Are they allowed to associate with you, or is there a problem with that?
The Lord has blessed me with a few friends. At age 58, and this has nothing to do with politics, it's just the way life is a few of my closest friends have died, unfortunately. So it seems that my life is a little more lonely than what it was a few years ago. But, the Lord has given me a few friends. But there's not a big Christian community up here. And then a lot of Christians that do go to church, they're definitely a little bit more tame, let's say. They're not going to join that picture you got up there is when I infiltrated the Vancouver Pride Parade. And by the way, that guy with the bicycle helmet on, his name is Herbert Chandra Spencer, and he's a New Democrat Party cabinet minister and an open homosexual. I'm in some photo opping with him, and he was on my website. I had that picture up there for years. He wasn't very happy with that. He actually knew who I was, and he had no idea that he was photo opping with me there. He's criticized me and wanted me prosecuted for hate speech, actually. In Canada, there's not a lot of Christian activists, not a lot of street preachers, but God has a witness everywhere, and there is a few. And I'm thankful that there's a few, and I believe that his church will be persevered, even in an environment like Canada, until he comes again.
We really don't have any choice, do we, Bill? I mean, we have to know to do good, not to do it. To them, that's a sin.
That is a sin, the sin of omission.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a price to be paid, which that would be a total probably a lifetime discussion, why that price would need to be paid. Yeah, I understand, saying I get that, but just, wow. Being a Christian seems to be a dangerous occupation. And one that...
A little more dangerous up here than in the USA. You might feel a little bit persecuted, but you're looking to me to be like where Canada was in the 90s, and that looked really good from fitting where I am now.
Well, are Christians getting shot in the street like they are here in America?
Thankfully, we don't have a lot of that, but Christians have been physically assaulted, and the police have refused to investigate on multiple occasions.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, in all fairness, in the United States, you got 350 million people and about 500 million guns, and not that many Christians have been shot in the street. And if it does happen, at least your police are investigating. We have a guy named Billboard Chris who had his wrist broken by Antifa, and the police just out and out refused to investigate the case at all.
Yeah. Bill, this has been...
Mom had Alzheimer's at 78, but today, at 82, she solves crossword puzzles better than me thanks to a spice hidden in the kitchen.
Costly to you, not just from a legal standpoint, paying lawyers, but from a personal, vocational standpoint. Tell the folks how this has affected your ability to make a living.
Well, when I got into the pro-life movement, and I started mainly with abortion, although I was always opposed to the homosexual agenda, I was actually a young nurse entering Canada's middle class, which, by the way, even for non-Christians, middle class is slipping away up here. We got very high inflation, very high unemployment. You know, we had a lot of businesses that were very, would be the word, vulnerable to trade decisions made by the United States, and tariffs are effectively shutting them down. And I don't blame Trump for that. He's president of the United States, and the manufacturing is coming home, which is good for you guys and what he should be doing. Because we've had socialist leaders who have not diversified our trade routes, or in any way, shape, or form helped our resource industries. In fact, they've actively hindered them. We don't have many options up here, so those chickens are coming home to roost. Now, because of my activism, I really can't get a job anywhere in government. And in Canada, government is a full 40% of our jobs, literally.
Whoa.
Four out of 10 people work for government. And yeah, it's a huge tax burden, unsustainable. And we're learning that. And then in the private sector, when you get larger businesses, especially banks, auto manufacturers, things like that, unfortunately, our auto manufacturing industry is going anyways for everybody. But yeah, I really can't get a job there either, because they do a social media check, HR departments, and big businesses won't hire me. So mostly I've been self-employed, doing carpets and things like that. And I actually did get myself a nice bus job back in 2016. And then that was when I got charged with a hate crime. So even though I was acquitted of that hate crime, unfortunately I was fired and never got that job back. It is what it is.
No regrets.
No, I don't have regrets. I have had some questions at different points, and a pastor friend who was a very dear friend of mine, Robert Munoz, he died last year. He says, well, Bill, you had an interesting life. And I thought about that, because I said, yeah, I don't have my defined benefit pension. You know, I don't have any kind of wealth in this world to speak of much, but I've had a very interesting life. Who else has marched in the Toronto Pride Parade as a Christian and handed out 3,500 gospel flyers, and then been subject to 104 million class action lawsuit that the Prime Minister himself signed on to as a victim, and then became the subject of a Canada-wide arrest warrant, and then have 2 criminal trials over it. That really does make for an interesting life. And like, that's one heck of a good gospel flyer to get all that. You know, I could have been a jihadist and detonate myself in the parade, and the legal proceedings would have been long over.
Interesting. I've got a quote up there. One man with courage is a majority, and that's from Thomas Jefferson. Other than last call, whatever connections have you been able to make, Bill, as a result of your efforts to assure righteousness in your nation?
I would say one of my most loyal friends and supporters has been mass resistance. I got to be grateful for those guys. They stuck with me for years.
Good group.
Yeah, and then I guess the Holy Trinity's been there for me, in a very intangible but very real way. So, LifeSite News has done a few stories. They're kind of a Canadian/American outlet. They have offices in both countries, I believe. God has given me what I needed, and I really can't complain about that.
Like I said, no regrets.
No.
I mean, it's a blessing that you get to talk to BJ. I mean, that in itself, I mean, very few people have that opportunity.
Well, praise the Lord that I had that opportunity. And I got to meet you in person once. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was neat. That was incredible.
It really was, because people who are charged with felonies usually aren't allowed to leave the country. And I actually told them that it was to go visit pro-family people.
Well, yeah, that was it.
I'd actually give the okay for that when that's what I'm being charged with, is being a pro-family activist. You guys are considered unsavory by the courts up here. They actually gave me permission to go visit all of you. Like, you can usually only leave the country if your mother dies or something, and then it's only for 1 or 2 days and you have to be back.
They were probably
a 3-week holiday. That was pretty good.
They were probably glad to get rid of you for a while.
Well, they made sure I came back. They told me I had to.
You broached the subject of family, and families are under attack. And I know that you've had pressure within the family and within the neighborhood. Can you touch on that? Look, this is not easy, folks. This is not easy. And when you're dealing with family members, that's love and that's closeness like no other. And I know women are very security oriented. And can you talk to that at all, Bill?
Geez. That one, I don't want to say that it's because of my activism, although in some ways it definitely was because of my worldview. Now, I've had a couple destroyed marriages, and to be clear, I do not believe divorce is a good thing.
Yep.
And my earlier marriages, it was mostly my fault, and it was more my sin that wrecked the marriages than anything else. So I wouldn't want to give the impression that somehow my previous destroyed marriages was a result of heroism on my part. It wasn't. It was a result of my sin and bad judgments, and compounded bad judgments on top of that. And, in 1 or 2 cases, maybe the wives had issues too, even from different issues they had before they ever met me. My last wife left, really, it was the most bizarre fight. And I've had a lot of growth in my life, and I believe I did a good job. I really believe I did. And I was fighting for my children, and I was they were stepchildren, but I treated them like my own. And I certainly let the wife know that I loved her. But yeah, the big issue was our son wanting to go to the public school, and I was adamantly opposed to that. And strangely, my wife, my estranged wife, I wouldn't say we're ex-wife yet, but it looks like that's where it's going. She really was against public schools, when we met. Unfortunately, she is very differential to the 16-year-old, and she believed that a Christian school would ruin that kid's life because he needs friends and he needs soccer. He went to the high school and wound up on marijuana the first year there. And in Canada, cannabis is much more prevalent than the U.S., although I know it's a big problem in the U.S.
It's growing. Excuse the pun.
Yeah, you're catching up to Canada. probably in places like Colorado, it's the same where it's legalized and you got stores. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, and then you know, there was the issue of chores and things, which I worked harder than anyone, but I really believe the kids had to do them. So it wasn't so much the LGBT activists issue that broke us up. It was just a 16-year-old rebelled, and he really didn't want to follow Christ. And I couldn't make him follow Christ, of course.
Yep.
Paul is an ad strategist, building a campaign in Google Ads. It's tedious work. Fluency unifies.
I don't believe in jihadism, but I really believed he needed to be in a Christian school. And unfortunately, the wife had so much anxiety. One day I went for a nap. I didn't see the marriage coming to an end. When I woke up, they were gone, and I just thought they went to a store. And then around 10 o'clock at night is when I figured out they left. And so, yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow. And I look over it, and I don't think I did anything biblically to deserve that. But, you know, we do live in a fallen world. And I guess there was secular pressures. In Canada, it's hard to be a Christian. In Canada, it's hard. You know, it's hard to even defend something like Christian schools. You know, there's tremendous pressure on young kids that they want to be a part of the world. And unfortunately, if the parents aren't unified, things can break up. That's kind of the way I see it.
I get it. Dick Manasari, did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say what a wonderful conversation this is. This is a real human being doing really brave things, a leader in the remnant. I think part of this message is the remnant is small and it's not getting bigger. I have a question. Given all that we've heard about Canada, there's other things we could talk about in terms of Canada's position in the world and what it supports. But I'm just curious, Bill, why do you think the President of the United States has actively discussed annexing your country and pulling it into America? What do Canadians think about that?
We need another California.
Canadians get hysterical if they're on the left, really hysterical. In fact, I wish I knew you were going to ask that question. I would have sent BJ Edwards pictures of boomers, most of them government employees or retired government employees up here, running around on the street with their elbows up in the air, because that was allegedly the way we were going to stop Donald Trump's invasion of Canada, was by putting elbows up like a hockey fight. And so you see these 60 and 70-year-olds, and they almost look like chickens flapping the arms as they're chanting elbows up around downtown streets in front of various buildings. And that would have been an excellent picture to show. In Alberta, there's a substantial minority, and that's where I live, that actually want to be part of the United States. And I've heard that some high-ranking leaders in the Alberta separatist movement have actually talked directly with the Trump administration, and they've gotten to the highest echelons of the Trump administration, talking about bringing Alberta possibly into the United States, or we might be a sovereign nation, a very small one with close ties to the United States. Trump is a difficult man to read. He is very contradictory, as you guys were discussing before I got on. He's done some really good things. He's done things that concern me. I would vote for him in a heartbeat. That's where I stand. I've actually had a couple Americans unfriend me because they were never Trumpers. I'm a Trumper, I suppose, but he's not Jesus, and I'm under no illusion. When he talks about annexing Canada or Greenland, sometimes I just think he's being a troll, but other times he pushes it enough that I think he might be halfway serious. Of course, I have a better understanding of the American government than most Canadians. Even if the guy's dead serious, you're not going to get Congress to sign off, I don't think, on annexing Canada. I'm really not worried about seeing American tanks roll over our border. Some Canadians literally think American tanks are coming here, and they run around with their elbows up as a defense. I kid you not. And they are dead serious. We've banned American alcohol in Ontario as a defensive mechanism against potential invasion, which is silly. Wow. Yeah, that is silly. And they have talked, some of our politicians about needing to, we had Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister. Now, as you guys probably know, Canada has no military to speak of. I believe our military is the smallest in NATO, save Luxembourg, even though we're a big country. People also don't know that we used to have 2 aircraft carriers, so we actually rivaled present-day China. And we fought really, really hard in World War II, and we were greatly respected. And some Germans in Normandy said they preferred fighting Americans over Canadians because we were outdoorsmen and actual heterosexual men. And Americans were hard fighters. There was no one who would have ever said otherwise, but we were just that tough. Now we're woke. Half of our army is non-binary. I kid you not. That's not hyperbole. We literally have freaks in our army.
That's to be expected.
Our army is incredibly small, and we got nothing to defend ourselves against if Nigeria invaded us. Never mind Canada or USA. But Mr. Freeland, during the last election, said we need to make an alliance with France and the UK to fall under their nuclear umbrella against Donald Trump. So Canada has no capacity to make a bomb, and this crazy woman floated in the middle of an election that we can just borrow France's bombs, which are totally dilapidated, and I don't even know that they're intercontinental, and they could launch a nuke at Washington on our behalf if Washington marches into Ottawa. We're that silly. It's really that silly. I'm ashamed to have to tell this to your American audience. But in Alberta, where I am, there's a substantial number of Albertans that are pro-American. And that remains in spite of the media propaganda. And a lot of that hysteria has been whipped up by the media. And Canadians are a gullible lot, so we fall into that. I'm hoping that it's mostly superficial, but some of it seems to be kind of staying a lot longer than I wanted, this anti-Americanism that's up here. I fear Canada is a lot more communistic than the United States, and I think actors like China have infiltrated our media and government, and in some ways they are indirectly whipping up this anti-Americanism.
Thank you.
It's stealth. Thanks, Dick. It's stealth.
It is stealth. It very much is.
Yeah, but it's happening in America too, as well as the stealth. Listen, you listen to B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call, our guest Bill Whatcott. Bill, I want to get back to the subject at least for a little while. We got about 5 minutes. The LGBTQ movement, nationwide, North American wide, has really got a stranglehold, if it would appear to have a stranglehold, on any kind of common sense. And I started the program off today talking about righteousness and how America was established as a Christian nation. Mm-hmm. And how, again, speaking of the stage, we got off the stage and elevated the LGBT community to the stage. Now they won't let us back. We can't even talk about letting us back on the stage because it's hate speech. And they've done a great job in terms of turning that around. But we can also use that against them because they're the ones that claim that they were discriminated against, that they were being hated, yet they call us haters, they call us names. So we should be able to use that from the prone position that we're in right now and lift ourselves back up on the stage individually, corporately, and over time. But we need to regain that. And I'm recommending that we use their methods, which is America, and I'm sure Canada is the same, love victims. So let's make ourselves, we are the victims. We can't have Christianity. We can't go to Washington, D.C. and complain. We can't stand in speech in public. It's anti-Christian here, anti-Christian there. So we are the victims now. We are the minority, regardless of how we got here. So that's my recommendation about how we take that stage back. Any quick comments?
Yeah, I guess I'd take a little different tact.
Okay.
Certainly in the realm of polemics, we can argue we're victims, and that's true. there's not been 135 gay bars burned in this country. There's not been 135 mosques burned in this country.
Mm-hmm.
There has been 135 churches, and the little bit of media coverage that was there, the media not even implied, it was fairly overt that Christians deserve that was because we abused all these Indians and murdered these Indians in residential schools. Yep. And in actual fact, there's not a single body of a Native child that has died at the hands of a priest or a nun or a minister. Some have died of pneumonia and died of, what was that common disease? Tuberculosis last century. But white people were dying for those reasons. And white people are in some of those unmarked graves. They were unmarked because we had no money. We made little wooden crosses that have deteriorated over the century. It's just total blood libel. But now that being said, so we could argue that we are the victims of hate speech and hate crimes. I think as Christians, we got to remember that we got the joy of the cross. And St. Paul was not a whiner. So generally, when gay activists call me names, and they do, I don't even respond. I just keep going with the message that I'm going with. And when they say you can't protest, I show up. Like, that was the whole purpose of me going into the Toronto Pride Parade, is they took away my right to free speech in Whatcott decision in the Supreme Court of Canada. They said my speech was hate speech and that I had no place in the public square. Well, I applied in the Pride Parade to march as an openly Christian man, and then they hatefully banned me from their parade. So then I applied as a gay zombie cannabis consumer. And then I marched and put out my gospel message anyways. Of course, they didn't figure out what I did until it was all done. And then that's when I became the subject of a $104 million lawsuit. But I kind of think that we just have to focus on the message, telling the truth, kind of ignoring some of the noise. When the other side is creating noise, just keep telling the truth. And that does get through to some people. Like, the last 30 years of my life has not been totally wasted. When I was sitting in jail, I had a bigger church that I was running out of my jail cell than the liberal chaplain who had access to the entire prison. I think she had 450 inmates and she'd get like 7 on a Sunday. I had 50 inmates in my pod, and at its height, I had about 22 of them in my cell for prayer and listening to our Bible studies. So, and some of those people I heard years later were affected by what I did. And I'd like to believe some came to Christ. So, and if people keep coming to Christ, then the witness isn't gonna die out, right?
Yeah, yep. Just give that some thought. Martin, I'll let you on, but you got to make it quick because we only got a couple minutes, okay? I think you had a question or comment.
Thank you. Yes, Bill, you being a Christian, I want to know, and please tell the other Christians out there, would you or would you not do everything all over again if you had the chance to do so?
Thanks, Martin. Thanks. A great question.
That is a really good question. In terms of my personal family life, I would do a lot different. In terms of avoiding sexual sin, I would do that if I could. In terms of some of the anger issues I had when I was younger, I would redo that. In terms of picketing abortion clinics, losing my nursing career, going into the Pride Parade disguised as a gay zombie to share the gospel, I don't think I would do that stuff over again. I think I would do that. I think God even called me to that. So, often our lives are not black and white. I think my ministry was one that I was called to, as difficult and controversial as it is. When I look at my personal life, there is regrets. I trust that God might use some of that for good, but there might be lifelong consequences on this side of heaven as well. So, we have to accept those consequences, but not really defeat ourselves over them.
Yeah. There are natural laws.
There's natural law. Yep.
Spiritual and physical
principles.
Yes. Yep.
Hey, David's life was plagued after he committed his sin with Bathsheba and murdered Uriah the Hittite. He even had some of his own kids want to kill him. And I don't know that that was natural law, but that was spiritual principles. He sowed violence and adultery, and years later he was still reaping, and yet he was a man after God's own heart.
Bill Whatcott, Canadian Bill Whatcott. Bill, you've been a blessing to me. I love your drive. I love your loyalty to the Bible and to the truth. And I can only wish that the Lord would go before you, brother, and provide the protection around you, and keep the wind at your back instead of in the front. And I know that can happen. I don't know how that happens and when it happens, but you are truly a blessing, and I think exemplary in terms of, here it is before you, you see a need, you jump into it. You don't question it, you see it, you jump. And the consequences aren't always easy to begin with, but it's not this life that we need to concern ourselves with as much as we do the next life. Bill Whatcott, Canadian, thank you very much. We're fighting against this LGBTQ insanity that is going on the North American continent as well as elsewhere. Thank you again, Bill. I can't thank you enough. I can't thank everybody enough for helping out today. Clem, I would have got you in. You never unmuted, so I'm sorry, brother.